What's the purpose of life?
Purpose of life is to bring our Creator praise. But all of us sometimes have a plan for God. But God had a different plan.
Doing spoken words now, writing books. Where does all the creativity come from?
Of course, the creativity does come from my Creator. He's the most creative, right?
What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made?
Not always addressing things as quickly as I needed to.
He looks 34.
Thank you.
But he's 53.
People usually guess I'm in my 30s, so we have a lot of young adults in our church.
What visions has God put inside of you for the future of your church?
With our church, I would love for us to be able to purchase our property.
What are like 2 or 3 non-negotiables from a DNA standpoint?
You gotta have chemistry with.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Successful DNA. Here with my friend, a treat today, my friend, Pastor Tommy. Pastor Tommy, welcome to the pod, man.
Man, it's good to be here, bro. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Love it.
Down here in downtown St. Pete. Let's start off with a heater. Let's go straight into Pastor Tommy's testimony.
Yeah, all right, man. Well, originally grew up in Philly, and I am a PK. Not a Philly kid, but that's part of it, but a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
So I grew up in church. I had to be there every time the doors were open, man, because, you know, my dad was the pastor. So went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Sometimes it was Friday night prayer, all that stuff. So grew up with a great faith foundation, good family foundation. I'm super grateful. But as I became a teenager, you know, growing up in an urban environment and seeing what everybody else was doing at school and in the streets, that started to kind of draw me in. And for several years of my life, I was kind of living this double lifestyle. I had to be at church on Sunday. I was actually the drummer. So I'm up there playing drums, trying to like holler at the girls, like, hey girl, like twirl my sticks, you know. But I was a different person outside of church during the week in the neighborhood and at school, and was hanging out with the wrong crowd, did some illegal things, all kinds of stuff I got involved in. But all through that season, God always kind of kept his hand on me that I was out there, but I never went like too far like some of my friends did. And after a couple of years of that, just searching, just trying to find popularity and chasing after material things and girls and all that stuff, soon just found like this is empty. It's not doing it. And I felt like I was duped. But I kept trying to hang on for a little longer. Like maybe there's a better party that I'm going to go to, or maybe it's a different girl that I'm going to get with, or a different group of friends that I'm going to get with, or another piece of jewelry that I'm going to get that's really going to like do it for me. But eventually I realized like, man, this is just empty. I'm just like chasing the wind. And so came back to my faith and recommitted my life to Christ. And
when was that?
That was when I was 19. So I was 19 and went to college my first year, Christian college, didn't have a major declared, wasn't sure what I was going to do. You know, had it all planned out when I was a kid, right? I want to be this and this. And then when you get to that age, I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. Or, God, what am I supposed to do? So that first year of school, second semester, God got a hold of me and really kind of put a call in my life to do ministry in an urban context. And so I transferred my second year and came down here to Florida and went to Southeastern University, which was just Southeastern Bible College back then. And I met my wife. She was from New York City. And I decided, all right, I'm going to stay at school here. And then when we finish and graduate and get married, then we're going to move back up north. But that was our plan for God. But all of us sometimes have a plan for God, right? Mm-hmm. But God had a different plan. He brought us to Tampa. And so we've been in Tampa now since graduating school and started a youth ministry at a small little urban church plant called Crossover Church. And you know, there was no teenagers really. There was one teenage girl at the church. It was just a handful of people. And they're like, look, you can come and have freedom to do whatever you want to do to reach kids in the community, unchurched kids. And they meant it because there was just one teenage girl. And so did two things, did basketball leagues and hip hop concerts. So used sports and music to reach teenagers. And that was kind of the base that started to grow the ministry back in the day.
And then what was the transition from leading the youth to leading the church?
Yeah, man, that was something that I had never planned, and I didn't want to do it because that's what my dad did. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had this deal with God. I'm like, all right, I'll go into ministry, God, but I'm going to be a youth pastor, not a senior pastor or lead pastor. Yeah. We call it lead pastor now. Senior sounds like super old. But I'm not going to do what my dad did, but I'm going to do youth ministry and work with teens, and that's what I love. And I've always been a creative, and I've been an artist. So I was doing music, and that really became my way to be, in full-time ministry in the urban context. So I was tent making, like in the Bible, the Apostle Paul made tents. Me, I rapped. So literally I did 2 independent albums in the late 90s, and then I got signed to a national label. And this was back in the day when you used to have to go to the store to buy music, right? Now we could just pull our little computer out of our pocket and just listen to anything we want at our fingertips, right? But you have to actually go and buy a CD or a cassette. And so the only way you could really have a national impact is if you were signed. And miraculously, I got signed to a label, and my music was in stores, and it started to open up doors and opportunities for me to do music around the country, and even several, other countries that I went to and did music as well. So that provided income for me to work for free for the church, or they would give me a small stipend when they could. But the church was small, and the pastors were bivocational, meaning like me, they had other jobs. They had to be a tent maker. But about 6 years into it, the youth ministry had grown to hundreds of teenagers and young adults coming, and Sunday still had 40. It was still stuck at like 40, but the face of the 40 looked different. It was mostly young adults that were my youth leaders by that point in time, and it transitioned. So the pastor at that time, had been 3 different pastors. Every 2 years, they would quit and get somebody else to do it because they got burned out. And so the last guy was, every time I got asked, do you want to do it? I'm like, nah, I'm good. Doing the youth ministry, it's booming. I'm doing my music. I can't wear any other hats. But finally, with the third guy, I was like, okay, I prayed about it. Me and my wife were like, all right, I'll do it for a little while and fill in the gaps until we find the next person. Because this guy was like done. And then a few months into it, doing it, I was like, I think we found him. It's supposed to be, this is what I'm supposed to do.
What year was that?
That was 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about late 90s and 2002. If you're on YouTube, you can see Pastor Tommy here. He looks 34.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
But he's 53.
52. 52. I'll be 53 this year.
Okay, 53 this year. So don't get confused looking at the baby face, talking about the 1990s rap game. So, 2002 to now, that's significantly long amount of time for a pastor to be at one church.
It is, yeah.
How have you stayed consistent? Obviously, I bet you went through some tough spells and whatnot, but just not got burnt out like all those other pastors.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that really has helped me is one of our biggest assets was we have freedom to do something new and something different. So I really get to be myself. I talk to so many different pastors, and when I speak at different churches and conferences, a lot of times the pastors are kind of more controlled in a setting of this is how we've always done it, and this is how you have to do it. You have to fit into their mold versus at our church in 2002, when I became the lead pastor, there was just a handful of people and there wasn't much organization. So it was almost like a new church plant. And so we were able to kind of create the DNA. We're talking about DNA, right? Yeah. We got to create the DNA of this is who we are as a church. This is what our core values are. This is what we're going to be about. And so to be able to do that from the jump and have the freedom to do that was so freeing that I could always felt like I was able to be myself. And that encouraged other people to be themselves. And we've always just had a young, creative, innovative environment that was kind of, cutting edge and doing new things. And so I believe that's really what's helped us to reach so many people that specifically were unchurched or de-churched. And that's something that's helped me. We have had that freedom all these years. That, and then the second thing I would say is I've learned to rest and take time off. I didn't always do that sometimes in the early years, but I think the thing that kept me going was I'm just kind of wired in a weird way. I'm a pastor, but an entrepreneur and an artist and all those things together. When I travel. So I was regularly every month traveling 2, 3, 4 times, flying out somewhere else. And those little trips would be even though I was going to do ministry and going to do work, it would refuel me. And it just took me away from my regular environment. You get that 30,000 foot view looking back at what you're doing. You're inspired. You're You're talking about what you're doing at home with other people. And I think that always kind of helped fuel me, whereas not everybody has those kind of opportunities to go and travel and also learn best practices of what other people are doing.
It's hard to not, I don't envy what pastors have to do and go through, because you got, as an entrepreneur, it's tough. And so on top of you having to preach 40 times a year out just at your church, much less everything else you got going on. That's tough in itself. But I think a lot of people, I always think about it all the time. It's a large church. You got payroll, you got insurance. There's another whole piece of stress to it. Since 2002, maybe let's dig into the business side a little bit. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made? We all make mistakes, that someone can learn from in the past 23 years.
And I love people. I'm an extrovert. I'm a people person. And I'm big on community and family and everybody being together. But there's been some seasons over the years where there was somebody that was on the team, on the bus. And as we grew, because we've had a lot of phases of growth, that particular person would hit a lid and they just couldn't go with us to the next level. And in my earlier years, I had mentors. That's another big thing that helped me stay, in the game all these years. And even till this day, I have several mentors that give me advice that I can bounce things off of. And several of my mentors were like, man, everybody's not going to be able to grow with you to the next level. And I would argue with them. I'm like, nah, this isn't, when I first became the pastor, the first couple of years, we had rapid growth. We went from 40 people to 400 in less than 4 years. And it was a lot of the same team that were my youth leaders that were now helping run the church. And now we're becoming this larger, church, but we're still creative and young. And I was like, nah, man, my team, they're my guys. They have my back and we're always going to be together. But the cracks started to show, as we got larger, and some of the things, just personally in people's lives and some of their flaws or some of the ways they weren't growing, even as we'd sit with them and correct them and talk with them and give them a plan of, these are some things we need you to do to work on. Oh yeah, I got you. But then they wouldn't do it. And then you would circle back to them again in another month or two and, say, hey, we talked about this, and this. And sometimes the part that also can be challenging is some of them were my friends. So we're friends, but yet I was their youth pastor, but now I'm their pastor. I'm their boss in some ways, because some of them were working, for the church. Some of them were volunteers. So that's also another dynamic that a lot of business people don't have to deal with all the time. In the church world, you're dealing with a lot of volunteers and they're not getting paid. So they're doing this because they're doing it for God, and they love the heart of the ministry, the vision of the ministry. So you can only push so hard sometimes with volunteers. With paid people, you can push harder, but it's different in the church world. In the business world, you can just fire somebody if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. In the church world, there's people following them and they're leading people, and it's just, it's delicate in a lot of ways. So some of the mistakes I made was not always addressing things as quickly as I needed to.
Yeah, it's hard to, like you said, they're your friends, but you're also their boss. It's the hard thing here. We have that too, right? I think successful groups, whether it's church, whether it's businesses, whether it's sports teams, the number one thing, or one of the number one things, has to be camaraderie. And so, camaraderie creates relationships, and then, letting people go isn't, I think we run things differently here too, where I truly care about their hearts, and I truly care about what they got going on. But at the same time, it can't harm the business, because then it harms everybody. Right? And same thing with you. If you don't, it's not just hurting you, or it's hurting the church, it's hurting the other, team members that have to put food on the table, by working at the church. Yeah. And so, and then what are the things, let's flip that, the more positive question. What are the things you've done a lot of things right in the past 24, 25 years? Let's talk through some of those.
Yeah. Some of the things we did right. I think being able to blend creativity with church. And we actually call our church, we say, come experience church remixed. And I think the way that church is done always has to be changing. It always has to be evolving with whatever, the culture is currently. The message is never going to change, but the methods of it, we can't be married to it. And I think that's the problem with a lot of churches. They get stuck in a rut of preference and tradition. And as culture changes and the next generation changes and doesn't connect with the methodology, the way they're doing it, and they keep doing it, then the younger generation many times leaves. And then that's why you have a lot of churches many times that are predominantly just older people and they're dying. They hit the bell curve and they're going down. Even at my age, even though I don't look my age, that's a trick, right? Yeah. So, people usually regularly guess I'm in my 30s. So we have a lot of young adults in our church because they think I'm almost in the age group. Or I'm just a little older than they are, right?
It's the whole Southern Baptist thing. Like if you have an older pastor, you got an older congregation and the same thing. But you have it all because you're 50, but you look 30. So.
Yeah. So we are very diverse age-wise, ethnically. We're in the city. So we're very diverse. Our team is very diverse. It's not just like the stage is diverse and then like the leadership team is not. We're diverse all over the place throughout the ministry. That's one of our core values. And then we're also we're multi-class, and that's a challenging one. Yeah. There's some churches out there that are more and more churches are multi-ethnic now. I think it's about 25% of churches are becoming multi-ethnic. But multi-class is the challenging one because then you have to disciple people differently. And so, but that's something that we're learning, we're growing in. But I think, again, back to the main question is we've been able to be creative and do new things and try new things. And thank God, most of the things we try work really well. Every once in a while, there's something we're like, that wasn't it. But for the most part, we're able to try new things because we have the freedom, and then we watch just how God breathes on it.
Yeah, that made me think about, we have no debt on our side. It's just me and my business partner, so we have freedom to kind of, there's no VC company or private equity company behind us. So we can kind of the same thing. We try different things. Hey, that worked, or hey, that was a huge strike and a miss. But we're able to do whatever we want to do. Yeah. I haven't asked this question on the podcast before. I kind of have a tough one. I've been asking my inner circle with some of my mentors. It might be easy. It might be tough. What's the purpose of life?
What's up, you guys? I wanted to introduce to you our done-for-you Airbnb investing service called BNB Turnkey that has massive tax implications. It's basically an investing service that allows you to invest in cash-flowing Airbnbs and not do any of the work. It's best explained in 3 phases. Number 1, we find, analyze, and underwrite the property. In phase 2, we handle all the interior design and construction. And then phase 3, we manage the property on the back end. The best part is most of our clients qualify for the short terminal loophole of the IRS tax code. This allows for average clients to write off over $200,000 in depreciation on their tax bill. For more information, click the link in the description to connect with our team. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the episode.
Purpose of life is to bring our Creator praise. That's why we were made. That's why we were designed. We're made in the imago Dei, the image of God. And that's originally what the plan was. When we were, Adam and Eve in the garden, we were just supposed to be giving God praise, working with God, having that close relationship, but then sin entered the picture. And we have this sin nature, and we're drawn to do the things that are wrong. And so then we're separated from God. And that's what, as we're filming this right now, we just celebrated Easter, Resurrection Sunday. And that's, the pinnacle, our whole faith hinges on that, is that if the resurrection didn't happen, we can all just pack it up and go home. Yeah. But we believe that it did happen, that Christ came, died on the cross for our mistakes. He was the perfect sacrifice. And 3 days later, death wasn't the end of the story, but he resurrected. And, if you're watching this and you're skeptical, I shared this on Sunday, I was a skeptic too. Yeah. Even though I grew up in church, that whole resurrection thing, they killed him. He was dead for 3 days. And they wrapped him in burial cloth. And they put a sword in the side. The fluid came out to make sure he was really dead. So it's not like he was maybe not fully dead and he just woke up a few hours later. It's 3 days later. And he was actually this was a supernatural miracle. Like, and I know a lot of us are like, well, I want to see the footage. Do we have the footage for that? I want to see the proof. But as you do research, like there's over 500 people that saw the resurrected Jesus. And he appeared multiple times after he resurrected before he ascended back into heaven 40 days later. And many of those people became martyrs, meaning like they died for their faith because they wouldn't deny that they saw the resurrected Jesus. And listen, if they hadn't really seen it, somebody would have cracked. Somebody would have been like, yo, okay, don't kill me. We were just playing. We made it up. But it was real. And so there's so much more I could say about that. But so much hinges on the resurrection.
I even saw on Instagram, like within the past week or two, there was a new, either a painting or something. Did you see that? A new painting or a new something that was able to essentially, it was like, because of the wounds of that painting, it was Jesus, and it was like identical to what the Bible explains. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, yeah, check it out.
One thing I've been struggling with lately, how have you handled, like, whether, recently or in the past, like that you're not doing enough? Have you ever struggled with that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But then I write down on the list, I'm like, I'm doing a lot, right?
That's true.
But you feel like you're not sometimes.
And not in like a prideful way, but like in a way that like God's given me so many talents and gifts, and I'm just not doing enough with them. I feel like sometimes, but even though if I wrote them down, I bet I would.
Elliott, man, I encourage you, bro. You're in your early 30s.
Yeah,
you got a lot of seasons and time ahead of you that you're going to be able to do some of those things that you're passionate about. Maybe right now is not the season as you're building this part of your business, or it's in this season, or you got 2 little boys, another little girl on the way, right? We only have so much capacity during certain seasons. I'm in a season now where my girls are big, because you told my age. My girls are 19 and 22, so they have their own cars, they're independent. My youngest, she's away in college. My oldest, she's got a job. And so I'm able to have a lot more freedom. Me and my wife have more freedom to even travel together, go places together, go out, be spontaneous like we were back in the day before kids, right? But there's going to be lots of seasons ahead where, maybe some of those things that are on your dream board or your vision board, you're going to be able to activate those things. Here's another part too that maybe you never thought of. I shared this on Sunday as well. I'm going to re-preach some of my sermon today. Yeah. Like this life's not the end of the story.
That's right.
If you got a relationship with Christ, we're going to have a new body, and we're going to be in the new heaven, the new earth. And some people can think that heaven is just going to be this eternal church service. And so they're like, well, I don't want to burn in hell, so heaven's probably better. Yeah. But yes, there will be times we'll be gathering in heaven, worshiping, our Creator, like right in front of us. It's going to blow our minds. Can't even imagine or fathom what that's going to be like. But the Bible also says we're going to be leading things. We're going to be working. We're going to be creating. We're going to be able to recognize our loved ones and spend time with them. And we're going to probably be exploring the new heavens and the new earth. So some of the things that maybe God has put in us as passions that we might not be able to do in this lifetime, or you might be watching this podcast or listening to this right now, and maybe an opportunity passed you, or you feel like you've aged out of something. Well, maybe that passion is still going to come back to life. It was just planted there. And in eternity, we have forever and ever that some of those things will be lived out, and probably many more things that we don't even know about yet. And so, man, there's plenty of time to do what we're going to do for God. The best is yet to come.
I feel better already.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your wife. So obviously you're not here without her behind your back this whole time. It's been, y'all been married coming up 30 years.
We just celebrated 3 decades in February, February 10th. So 30 years, bro.
So like let's dig in there. Like, I mean, what's the key to successful marriage in your opinion?
Yeah. So I'll say this, the first 10 years of our marriage were good, but there was definitely some times when we kind of kept circling back around to some of the same things that we were like, oh, like, you don't get this. And she's like, you don't get this. You know, I think around year 10 is when we really got on the same page. And you just have to accept some things in marriage, like a marriage counselor that we went to, as a friend of mine as well, is just like some things you're never going to fully solve. Mm-hmm. And you have to accept that, and you have to learn to compromise and deal with, some of that. But I think as we continue to grow together, so a lot of times couples will grow, and as time goes on, they grow apart because they're not intentional, at keeping some things together. But we grew as people, matured in Christ and matured in age, life experience, all those things. But, we grew together. We still kept staying together. And I think that was key. I think it's key that we also, every year we took time off without the kids, even when the kids were little. And that can be tough for some people, but thank God we had family and stuff like that we could leave the kids with, and we could go away for a couple of days. Sometimes it might have only been a night, but we would do that a few times a year when it was just me and her to kind of rekindle the romance and get away without the kids, because, kids can be all consuming, and they're great. They're awesome. But the bottom line is someday kids will leave. Spouses should always stay, but if we put the kids first, then sometimes the spouse leaves and the kids stay. So
the one thing Kylie and I talked about recently, because we had year 10 this July, was our 10 year, so 1 decade.
Let's go.
And you'll understand this and get this more than anybody, but where we went to the Bahamas for a baby moon 3 weeks ago before the baby comes. And we were just talking about asked her that same question. We're kind of talking about what's made us kind of work the most. And I think just recently, within the last 1 or 2 years, we finally, I guess we knew this, but just reaffirmed this, that I'm never going to be able to fulfill Kylie. And she's never going to be able to fulfill me and make me completely happy. I mean, same thing from whether it's the new piece of jewelry or the new girl, whatever it may be, a little different. But, there's only Jesus can fully fulfill us. And so when we get away from Jesus, we get a little bit rocky. But when we get back to Jesus, and in our walk.
He's the glue that holds it together. Absolutely.
And then, from a business perspective, from what you've had to go through with the church or your art or your books, what support has she given you that's just been the most amazing thing?
Yeah, so I've always been I've been a risk taker, as an entrepreneur and as a pastor leading a new kind of church. Is this going to work? Is this, and the demographic that our church, especially when we started, most, church organizations and church planting organizations be that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. You're in an urban context and you're dealing with predominantly younger people. How are you going to support that? How are you going to, because there's no resources there. There's no finances. How are you going to make that work? But so we've always had to be very entrepreneurial as a church. And one thing that helped us in our first building was we basically had the building for free. Somebody basically gave us the building and we're on paper paying $1 a year. And then as we grew and grew, and that person was still at the church and involved and in leadership and everything, older, from another generation, from another culture, but loved what was happening because he saw people coming to Christ. And in 2007, signed over the deed of the building officially to the church. He had been talking about that, but then it finally happened. And we were able to sell the church then. And that, gave us, in addition to raising money, we sold the church. That moved us forward to we took over a former retail box, an old Toys R Us store. And Jeffrey the Giraffe got saved.
There you go.
Came to Jesus. Yeah. And so we've been meeting in this 43,000 square foot former Toys R Us store the past 15 years, and it's been amazing. But that would have never been able to happen if we wouldn't have had certain things in place, and we were entrepreneurial. We had a house on the former property. Some of the staff stayed in the house, and so that was their pay, and housing was included and a small stipend. And so there was just lots of things that we did. And then of course creating some other streams of income for the church, which we do a lot of today, even with renting out our facility regularly, with having food service. We have a merch store. There's just a bunch of things that we do that create other streams of income that can help us, move that money to outreach.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I love about the church, and really whether it's the sports too, football, baseball, whatever it may be, is if you are from another country and you look at the American news, you would think that the most opposite of what is truly the case when it comes to race in America and race relations. At least for me, probably similar to you, it's the best thing ever where, whether you're Spanish or whether you're black or whether you're white, I have the most amazing relationships because our common denominator is Jesus.
Yeah.
What's your view on race relations in America?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be some tension there, because I think, there is some systemic stuff that does happen that holds some people of color back in some communities. But I think at the same time, there is the element of the media that also wants to keep us divided. The algorithm wants to keep us divided, not just black and white, red and blue. And so, there's definitely a strategy, I think, that's there by the elites or whoever it is that wants to keep us kind of fighting.
Don't get us.
Yeah, they're watching us right now. That wants to keep us divided and keep us fighting with each other. I think that in culture, because of that, because of the algorithm, because of the news, because of some bad experiences that some people have had with people of other races, there is real mistrust sometimes between some people. But I think when you come to the church side of it and you have Jesus in the mix like that, it draws everybody together.
Yeah.
And it's the common denominator. So we've always been a diverse church. We've never had the whole multi-ethnic thing for us has never been hard to do. We've never had issues with people fighting over this or that. Oh, I'm this person's that. It's just been organic. It's been natural, because that's, who many of us are. Many of us were from up north of the Caribbean, where it's very diverse anyways. And so Tampa's just a big, melting pot.
We'll come back to some of the church stuff later. I want to dig into how creative you are, whether it's back in the 90s, rapping, doing spoken words now, writing books, you got the apparel company. Like, where does all the creativity come from? Any of your parents create like this? Or
I mean, I could say, oh, it's all God.
Yeah.
Like people say stuff like that. And then I said, well, if it was all him, actually probably would have been a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it's good. So I always mess with people when they say that. That's the cliche answer, right? I mean, of course, the creativity does come from my creator. He's the most creative, right? My mom was a musician, and so she played piano, she played organ. She was, a creative in her own right. My dad was not a musician, but he was still creative and pushed the boundary in some ways. Even as a pastor, like, we were at a more traditional church, and he was always pushing the envelope to try to make us more modern, to reach more people and change the music and change the aesthetics of the building. And I mean, I always watched him trying to make things better. And so I think that definitely rubbed off on me. And then there was some creatives in my family as well. My uncle was a recording artist that traveled around the world and did several records, like vinyl records. And he did CDs and tapes and all that as well. He was in this group called the Couriers, and they literally traveled around the world. He passed away a few years ago. He was in his 80s, and he was still traveling and doing stuff, even at his age. He just wouldn't stop. He loved it.
So what do you have going on right now in the creative world?
Creative space right now. So I've written 7 books, and there's a couple books that I even re-released or re-edited and stuff like that. Just re-released a book called Love Our City. It's a 30-day devotional book, and it just kind of helps you really get better at learning to love your neighbors, to learn the theology of that. And then I brought you a box.
Yeah.
I did a book, my fun project, because I'm a sneakerhead. I love sneakers. It's called Gotta Be the Shoes, Where Sneaker Culture Meets Faith. And the book actually comes in a custom shoebox. And it's got sneaker paper wrapped around the book. It's hardcover, it's full color. So we did a photo shoot with all the sneakerheads from my church, and they brought their best pairs. So there's about 100 original pictures mixed in throughout the book. There's a master class with it. And it really, it does talk about sneaker culture and history, but then yet it ties in faith, because the Bible has a lot to say about feet, paths, direction, purpose, eternity, all those things. So I was kind of mixing all that in with the sneaker culture story and Jordans and just all that. So it was a really fun project to do. Currently, right now, I'm working on some new music. That's what I'm gonna do this year. I haven't done an album in a long time. It's been about 7 years. And I don't know if I'm gonna, we can always say, this is my last album. I don't know. I'm always gonna still do music. It's a tool in my tool belt. It'll probably just be a lot of singles that I release, like I've done the last 7 years. I release a single or two every year. But yeah, I'm probably gonna do an album this year. That's what I'll see what happens. I'm working with some different producers from my church, starting to get beats from them and starting the writing process, and got to re-engage kind of that side of my brain, that muscle a little bit. But I just did a new spoken word piece for Easter, and came out really good. I was excited about it.
You want to give it to us at the end?
I might.
And then what about your clothing brand?
Yeah, clothing brand is called Eternal. And I launched that in 2017 because both my mom and my dad passed away that year, in the same year. So as you can imagine, that was tough. My dad, he had been in a nursing home for several years. He had a brain aneurysm. And so, we thought he was going to get healed. He got a little bit better, but then he kind of plateaued, and then he was declining. And so that, in some ways, was almost like closure for us, because we're like, okay, God, if you're not going to heal him, take him home. But my mom, on the other hand, had cancer, and she was doing pretty good up until the last couple months. And then it finally, started to deteriorate her body. And that was really tough to see her go through that. So I know a lot of people have experienced losing a loved one to cancer, and it's a challenge. But through all that, as painful as it was, knowing that they both knew Christ and that they're going to get a new body that cancer can't invade, and it's not going to get old, no matter how much we biohack or whatever. We were joking about that before. Eventually, these bodies are going to wear out. But we do have this promise and this hope that we're going to get new bodies. We're going to be in heaven. We're going to live forever. And so our soul lives on to be eternal. And so even though I know, I preached about this, I preach funerals, all that stuff. But when your parents die, man, it hits different. But God comforted me with that word, eternal. And so that's the meaning kind of behind the brand. It just really be a conversation starter, like, oh, eternal, what's that? So it's and it's a great creative outlet. So we've done a lot of custom denim jackets. I got one on right now. We do hoodies, hats, shirts. There's a bunch of different merch pieces that we do regularly. Eternal.clothing is the website. And
then what visions has God put, inside of you for the future of your church and the future of your brands?
Yeah, so with our church, I would love for us to be able to purchase our property. We currently are in a long-term lease, which we have a sweetheart deal. It's amazing, it's great, but we do want to buy our property and would love to redevelop it and create housing on our property as well. And when I say redevelop it, I'm talking about housing, hotel, restaurants, the whole deal. We only have like 5.5 acres, but in the city, you could do a lot with 5.5 acres. You're in downtown, St. Pete. If you had 5 acres down here, there'd be like multiple towers going up. So our dream would be to kind of reimagine and recreate the property that we're on, right on Fowler Avenue. And it's an innovation district. I've sat on the board for the innovation district, and that's the goal. They want density to be there, and they want it to be mixed use. And so we would love to do that, to have the church right in the center of it.
How are you going to make that happen?
That is a great question. So first of all, we have to obtain the property. And even if we can't get that property, we believe that God's going to open up something else close by, because we feel like we're called to be in the city. And then I think a lot of it is just through, we have a lot of great real estate people around us. I'm sitting with one right now. Who knows? Maybe we'll do something together down the road.
And Myron's speaking Sunday at your church.
Myron Golden is speaking at our church. And
is he a member there?
What's that?
Is he a member there?
No, he's not. But he does come and do stuff with us regularly. We become friends, and he's become like a mentor in some ways, and he's just full of wisdom. So I think having those kind of relationships, and we have some great entrepreneurs and real estate people in our church too, to put all those pieces of the puzzle together, that when the time is there, right now we're kind of in that season where we're just saving. We're putting away resources. We're getting ready for whatever the future expansion looks like. And for me, that would be like my legacy project. In another decade from now, 12, 13 years from now, I'm going to be, by that time I'll be in my 60s. I'll be getting ready to pass the baton to somebody that's younger. I still want to be around if they'll have me in some position. But
door greeter or something.
Yeah, I'll do something, man. But so that, and then also we have a church network.
Just no parking team.
No, I'll ride around in the golf cart, man.
There you go.
We have a church network. We do a conference every year called Flavor Fest. It's an urban leadership conference and a music festival. We just celebrated doing that 25 years. We've trained over 7,000 leaders over that span of time. Awesome. And so out of that, we have a tribe, and there's a lot of pastors of churches that are similar to mine. They're entrepreneurial, they're in the city, they're multi-ethnic, they're diverse, they're creative, they're sneakerheads, they're all those things, right? But we started a church network. So we have about 20 churches that are in it right now. And so monthly we do a call together and we do training and create community. Annually we do a marriage retreat for them and their wives. And then annually we have the conference that we have. So our goal would be to multiply that in the future. So there's more churches being planted around the country in cities that are similar to ours, that have a similar DNA.
Well, man, let's end with that spoken word.
All right, man. Well, here we go. This is called History. Let's see if I can do the whole thing without music. It's about 2 minutes long, so hang with me.
You want the music?
Nah, we can't. Let's just do it right here on the spot. We can do it a cappella.
Okay.
History. His story. God created the heaven and earth in just 6 days. Humans were made in the imago Dei, the image of God, to give our Creator praise. Adam and Eve walked with God in the cool of the day. They had abundance in the garden. But along came Satan as a snake and said, I beg your pardon. Why can't you eat of that one tree? If you do, you'll become like God and be truly free. But they already were free and blessed. Satan tries to get us to always focus on our lack, and it always leads to mess. They took a bite of the fruit. Paradise shattered. Sin entered the bloodstream of humanity. Cain killed Abel, and violence spread. Nations divide, empires oppress. But God promised a serpent crusher in Genesis 3:15, and history becomes a search for that promised one to step on the scene. There was Abraham, Moses, David, and the prophets, but they all pointed to the Messiah that was promised. Then heaven steps into history. The incarnation where God enters time through a virgin birth is a mystery. His story is one for the ages. This is where the author steps into the pages. Jesus lived a life that was sinless, broke every world record like a Guinness, went on tour with his disciples to preach the good news. Thousands received, but he was falsely accused. He got arrested, got beaten and bruised, put a sign over his head that said, King of the Jews. And in history, that Friday before Easter is called good, but it was history's darkest hour as he was nailed to the wood. The cross seemed like the end of the story, but the sacrifice was necessary to reveal God's glory. His followers were in mourning, but 3 days later, Sunday morning, the stone rolls away, the key turns and unlocks the resurrection. Jesus walks out in his glorious perfection. He conquered sin, conquered death, offers forgiveness for your shame and regret, holds the key to unlock the best chapters of your story yet. So don't put it off till later. Life is like a vapor. Receive Jesus and become a history maker. Whew.
Amen, bro.
I did it.
That was sick.
I did it. A cappella. First time ever right here on the pod.
And then you did that Sunday?
I did it Sunday, and there was music with it. And there was also visuals behind me on the LED wall, and it was actually animated. So my friend Vinny DeMarco from DeMarco Films, an excellent creative filmmaker from Orlando, he created the entire backdrop to match every word, and he did it animated style. He used several different AI programs to do it. It took him a couple days to work on it, but came out amazing. You could see it on my YouTube channel, which is Urban D813.
Always in the podcast with kind of one question, with the podcast being on successful DNA. Whether it's yourself or people you've been around, or your wife or Myron or anybody in your church or friends or family, what are, like, from an entrepreneurial successful standpoint? So whether it's launching businesses or, I know there's a lot of this, the definition of success can be, changed around, but just entrepreneurial success, which that's what you are. What are, like, 2 or 3 non-negotiables from a DNA standpoint, trait standpoint?
Definitely. I think that whatever you're doing, who you're doing it with, like you mentioned the word or earlier, camaraderie, I would use another C word and say chemistry. Like, you gotta have chemistry with your team and enjoy working with people. That's key. Because even if you're doing something you love, but you're doing it with people you don't really connect with or vibe with or like even, it just kind of can steal some of the joy from it. You know what I mean? It's just not clicking on all angles. So find ways to do what God's called you to do, what you love, with people that you love. And then, as entrepreneurs, we can have a million different ideas, right? And then sometimes we try things, and it has to be something that you're really called to do and that you love. Because sometimes we can see something that someone else is doing, and we can want to try it, and then we're in the middle of it, and we've already invested some of our time and money, and then we're like, wait, this isn't it. Well, you can always cut it and go back to the drawing board. So do what you're called to do, and do what you love.
Well, you already mentioned YouTube, Urban D 813, is that right?
Yep, Urban D 813. That's all my handles on all platforms.
Okay. So Instagram, everything?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, man, thanks for coming. That was
man.
awesome.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here. Was that your first spoken word on a pod?
Yeah.
Hey.
First one.
Let's go.
Until you come on to do the next one.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
All right, man.